glaciers right there. These boulders have been moved off of rocks, in some instances dozens of miles away, maybe even 100 or a couple hundred miles away from their original mountains. Obviously, glaciers moved these boulders to where they are. However, when you look at them and you examine them, because there's erratic boulders all over the place, what you'll discover is a lot of these erratic boulders are moving in the opposite way that glaciers supposedly would have moved. It doesn't seem to make any sense. That's why they're mysteries. And there's no plausible theories put forth to explain them except for tonight. And like I said, they're not my theories. I didn't make these theories up. However, when I reveal them to you, these other people's theories, you'll soon go, oh, that's total, it's common sense. And the reason why it wasn't common sense back then is because these scientists, these researchers, these theorists had an incomplete or a poor understanding of gravity. Gravity is the key. That's why we're going to be spending, like I said, at least 2 weeks on it in the upcoming shows. Because once you understand how gravity works, you'll really understand how the earth is hollow. What else? Sand. Sand is a huge mystery how all the sand got into the deserts. Because sand is only formed at the coast. It's not formed in the middle of the ocean because the currents are not strong enough there. Long story short here, most deserts were formed by a single massive inundation, just like a sandbar is formed by currents at the beach. It's this huge flood that we're talking about, this huge flood that moved the erratic boulders, this huge flood that pushed sand out into the deserts, that, the Sahara and other deserts, there's evidence to show that they were once tropical or lush vegetative places, not after the Great Flood. It was the Great Flood that swept all these animals up, tore them limb from limb, plants, trees, and all. The animals are deposited in the Arctic and subarctic. The plants, the trees, all the vegetation wadded up, compressed, and deposited all over the planet. Then, after thousands, if not millions of years, that became coal. Man, I'm already 30 minutes into the show. Great Flood. Enough said. If you want more on the Great Flood, that's show 2. It'll air sometimes. Last thing on the Great Flood. Only when you accept the theory of the Great Flood and that occurred, lots of evidence that shows that it occurred between 4,000 and 5,000 years ago, there's more questions. Where did the water come from? Enough water to cover the earth. Where did all that water go? And if the Great Flood did happen, why can't we explain it? And the reason was all that water came from the seas, the oceans, inside the earth. I'll explain this in greater detail about, the shape, the way the surface, the inner surface is, but just roll with me here. There are great oceans within the center, within the hollows of the earth. As the earth needed to repressurize because there's gases in the earth, these gases needed to escape the planet, and when these gases burst through seams in the earth, it forced the great oceans inside the hollows of the earth out onto the surface. Then, once the gas was expelled and released into the outer atmosphere, then, once that equalization of pressure happened, these oceans could recede back into the hollows of the earth. That's where the Great Flood came from, that's where it went to, and that's why, I don't know, could it happen again? I'm not quite sure. Perhaps it's possible, but I think not, because there's probably different ways of pressurization and equalization of pressures that we'll talk about in a few weeks. Last week, we talked about the expanding earth. Cue the video. And It makes total sense. There was no Pangaea, because if there was a Pangaea, why would there be a supercontinent and this super ocean? There's no force that could cause the earth to evolve, to form in a way where all the land is formed in one spot. Let's see here. And this is a good video. Forget the name. The name will pop up here soon of the person. There was a guy on Access Television who showed this with pieces of a globe and a blue balloon. It was awesome. It was, it really made you think. And I looked for that online. I couldn't find it, but I found this, which, it's a little shinier, a little glitzier, but basically it's the same thing. Remember what I said earlier. The land is dated at 4,000 million years, but the seafloor only 200 million years. That's because the oceans did not exist at that time. When the earth was smaller, as you can see here, there were seas and rivers and, of course, water, but the great oceans were not formed until the earth expanded. And the earth expanding it didn't just happen overnight. It was a long, drawn-out process lasting millions and millions of years. As a matter of fact, the earth is still expanding to this very day. It is the expansion of the earth that causes earthquakes. It is the expansion of the earth that creates mountain ranges. It's this very expansive nature that solves many, many of the earth mysteries, along with the Great Flood, that I've just spent 15 minutes talking about. Plate tectonics is a lame, invalid theory thought up by people looking at a globe and thinking to themselves, oh, you know what? These continents kind of fit together. However, when you examine it, it's completely ludicrous. There is no known force that would split and break up Pangaea and cause the continents to move and drift across the surface of the planet. All theories of subduction, which is basically the supposed force that causes plate tectonics, are lame and invalid. And that's why they change every 5 or 10 years, because when put under the microscope, when exposed to the scrutiny of other scientists, all of their theories, whether it be convection currents or spreading sites and subduction, all of those theories are lame and invalid because there is no known force that can move these plates. I talked about earthquakes earlier as a great mystery, and you might have sat there thinking to yourself, Jeff, sometimes you can be such an idiot, because we all know that earthquakes are formed when two plates rub together, and that's that friction that causes the vibrations in the earth. No, that's not. You know why? Because plate tectonics doesn't exist. It's just a theory. If it wasn't a theory, it would be plate tectonics, the way things are. But it's not plate tectonics the way things are. It's plate tectonics the theory. It's evolution the theory. And granted, you might say, oh, Jeff, well, they're only theories because we can't prove it. Bingo! That's the thing. These theories should be able to withstand common sense, and they don't. All right, real quick here on the Ice Age. We are told of ice supposedly advancing from the poles to cover large parts of the earth. But did the Ice Age really happen? Ice ages, because it's not just one, but many ice ages, supposedly a cycle of these ice ages, going back and forth. Ice over the planet. Oh, no ice over the planet, but then ice over the planet. Supposedly, the last ice age receded just 10,000 years ago. However, what force would cause the formation of these huge, and by huge I mean continent-covering glaciers, almost up to the equator?